Welcome back to Active Ingredients, the leadership series for people who build, scale and shape the future of life sciences. I'm your host, Tom Dove, founder and CEO of Fraser Dove International. Today's guest is Michael Stanek, a CDMO leader whose career has been built at the intersection of science, operations and commercial execution. With more than 25 years in the industry, Michael has progressed from R&D chemist and project manager to leading Thermo Fisher's global small molecule API business. Michael has led P&L ownership across one of the industry's largest API networks covering 6 manufacturing sites. Along the way, he led turnarounds, integrated acquisitions, transformed underperforming businesses into profitable growth engines, and challenged traditional thinking about how commercial and operational teams should work together. This episode is about leadership under pressure, building alignment across complex organizations, and why some of the best commercial ideas come from operators who understand what happened after the contract is signed. Michael, welcome to Active Ingredients.
Welcome, and thanks, Tom, for having me here today. So really great, and that I can participate and share my story. Very fantastic.
Perfect. Yeah, and you've got a great story. I'm really interested and excited to dive into some of the details. As I said, that kind of intersection of your career is a really interesting one. But I suppose before we get started, I'd like to understand, as we always kick off in Active Ingredients, is what you believe are the 3 key ingredients of leadership and why?
So if I had to boil leadership down to the 3 ingredients, I would say empathy, then listening, and curiosity. And empathy because you can't lead people you do not understand, and listening because most of the signals you need as a leader don't come from dashboards, they come from people. So and this is internally as well as externally. And then the third was curiosity, because in complex environments, you never have the full picture. You need to drive and to explore, to question, to connect dots. So these 3 elements shaped my entire leadership journey. And I think we will come back to this in more detail, I guess, as you shared at the beginning. So what's my career path was. And they are simple words, but in practice, they're incredibly powerful, especially in environments where uncertainty, pressure, and complexity are the norm.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how simply you've put that, because people underpins all of this. And as you say, it's understanding people, listening to people, and asking people questions.
Absolutely.
And sometimes leadership can be so overly complex, but your natural curiosity, being able to build relationships with people, understand what they're saying, but also listening, proactively listening. I think that's really key, 3 ingredients. So thank you for those answers. Now, where did your curiosity start from, though? If you go back to when you were at school, when you were at college, were there any directions for a career in life sciences?
Well, it's actually studied both business administration and organic technical chemistry, and I've had to finance my studies by selling insurances. But I was always fascinated by chemistry and science. So in hindsight, the path into life science was pretty natural, I would say. It combined everything I enjoyed. So science, especially organic chemistry challenges, complexity, and business.
Yeah. And did you know anybody that had gone into the industry, or were there any sort of mentors at a young age?
No, it was more, let's say, when I studied chemistry. So it was always, I was already, when I was a child, at my chemistry box and was inspired by this. And later on, when I did the studies, so it was organic chemistry, the knowledge, the unlimited amounts of molecules you can generate. So it was the way of thinking, unlimited. So in this direction.
Yeah, love it. And what about so you're embarking on this kind of business chemistry type degree at university. When did you start to think about the corporate world? Obviously, you're selling insurance to pay for your studies. Was that quite a moment for you where you thought, oh, do you know what? I've got a bit of a commercial angle here. So give us a bit more of an insight into kind of how you then moved into corporate life.
Yeah, so it started, so right after I had finished my postdoctoral research stay. So then I had a great leader, so he hired me, in fact. So he came over to San Diego, and it was, a good match at the beginning. And he shared with me what else is possible in the industry. So then I was inspired, and I said, okay, I sign off. Yeah, it was, of course, this guy, he had a couple of beers while I was drinking orange juice, but it was incredibly nice evening we spent, and the learning of the future of a big corporation. Yes, and what really inspired me there.
Yeah, lovely. And what about if we go back to sort of childhood or, before you got into the corporate world, how was the leadership angle for you? Were you a natural born leader from a young age, or was that something that developed?
I would say yes. It th- let's say it was already during studies. I was leading training camps for learning camps for kids. Yeah, so there. And later on, when I stepped in my role, and this was my first role there, um, it was I had three direct reports to manage as a chemist, and one of them had just received a very negative performance review from my predecessor. So instead of accepting that judgment, I took the time to understand his skills and his value. So I invested in coaching, in training, and within a few months, his performance completely around. And by the way, he recently retired after 49 years with the company, so it was worth to spend the time there. Yeah, it was great. So, and I learned a lot from this, what really leadership means. So when you believe in people before they believe in themselves. So this happened to me as well. So I had great leaders; they believed in me, and this shaped my career. So in fact, okay, so you see a potential in a person.
Yeah. And how did you start to see the potential in people? I love that line, believe in people before they believe in themselves. How did you do that? Was it from a curiosity, asking questions, getting to know them? Can you explain a little bit more about your kind of natural leadership inclination at that time?
Yeah, so it's you can maybe get blind by the first impression, right? Or I try to look beyond the first impression, and so also to the curiosity, as you described, is always in my bloodstream. So um, I try to understand the person behind the role to create the conditions. This is what I want to, that people can grow. And it really taught me that potential is rarely obvious at the first glance, but if you invest the time and coach and give trust early, people can surprise you in the best possible way. And of course, I share my expectation as well. Yeah, so it's not one-sided, but if you're clear in your direction, so then I think then the other party really learns fast and adopt as well. Yeah, so you need to stay open with your heart.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting. Because if you look at your background, right, it's obvious that you must also enjoy solving technical problems. When did you first realize that you enjoyed leading people as much as solving those technical problems?
I think it came in parallel, right? So the first role as a chemist, you have three direct reports to manage, and you see that you form people. But I always like to work with people, so this was and maybe the insurance business helped me as well. I had to deal with different type of customers. I had to when I was running this learning camp. Yeah, so you have to work with different type of people and kids. And I would say children are much more honest. Yeah, so and share with you everything. whereas maybe adults lost this kind of behavior. So, and you have to open this again so that they feel naturally as people and bring out the maximum they would like to deliver wherever it is. Yeah. So this is what shaped me. Yeah.
Yeah. And what then shaped you was a career of change, okay, and a career of tough roles, turnarounds. So much of your kind of industry experience in life science has been restructurings, as we said, low margin environments, businesses operating sometimes in survival mode. They weren't easy assignments. Can you explain why turnarounds have been such a defining part of your career?
Yeah, for sure. So turnarounds can go in several ways. So I had two great examples here, right? So the first one was when the business was, and this was early in my career, was in a shaky situation. Um, and I was already in the commercial team there, and I have understood you have to change something. So you need to win this one big contract, or it was in fact in two contracts for the site, so that the business or the business results are becoming better. So it was a difficult time. So it was around 2004-5, and in principle, I steered the team. Yeah, so I had a project team. So we did a proactive route scouting, and it took us really 1 year to negotiate the contract, and we took some risk. Yeah, so this was exciting. But this winning, then negotiating for 1 year, turned everything around. Yeah, so in principle, people saw then and believe in okay, so there's a possibility if someone commits and believes in something and it's working, so then it pulled other people and other colleagues then in the same direction. So this is one example. Then later on, of course, there was another one, so the turnaround before the spin-off of uh, yeah, so DSM Pharmaceutical Products, and to get the merger with Patheon. So we had to do a huge turnaround. It was again a very fragile business situation. And together with a consultant, so we changed everything. We challenged the status quo, and yeah, so and turned this around before the merger happened. And this is really excitement. If you have for a couple of years this low margin business in a negative shape, and then you turn this around, so it's really a relief, and you build your strengths on this. You know that you have to go further in this, and it's possible, and people realize this as well. So it was great. Yeah. It was what really impressed me most was then how resilient the teams have been. Yeah? Even while we were restructuring behind the scenes, the business never missed a beat. Yeah? So customers didn't feel the turbulence, and internally we created clarity and direction at the moment when uncertainty easily have taken over. Yeah? So it was a fantastic time. Yeah? So which I don't want to miss.
Yeah. And it's interesting because my question here, I suppose, is what do you think environments teach leaders that, or, difficult environments rather than the successful times where everything's just great and you just kind of, you've got that positive flywheel. What's the difference in feeling?
Yeah, so and that's really great questions, because I think tough environments teach you things that success simply can't. Yeah, so success can be comfortable. Yeah, and comfort, I always call it like this, is dangerous. So this is my message always to the teams, because it can dull your instincts. Yeah, in a CDMO environment, especially, you can never rest. Every day is different, as every molecule is different. So you have to stay relentlessly curious, studying the market, watching competitors, understanding technology shifts, yeah, and constantly reassessing where the next disruption might come from. And if you operate uh, in a long period of success, you risk losing that natural alertness. or maybe the ability to sense when something is or changing underneath the surface. So challenging environments, on the other hand, sharpen your awareness, as I just shared the turnaround. So you learn to separate noise from what truly matters, and also you learn to make decisions with incomplete information, and you learn also to communicate honestly, even when the message is uncomfortable. So in turbulence, you grow, in my opinion, much faster because every decision counts, every assumption is tested, and every blind spot becomes visible. So for me, tough environments don't just test you, they shape you. And definitely the turnarounds we talked about shaped me as well, really as a leader.
And what about, so yeah, talking about leadership, right? So you're able to ride that wave of insecurity, uncomfortableness, ambiguity, whatever it might be. How do you keep the teams focused when the business is under pressure?
So for me, it's when the team is already under pressure, right? So, and leadership has to become very clear and very present. So if you are not here for the people, you cannot expect this. So, and that's the reason why I focus really on communicating the purpose of the change again and again. So in town halls, on the shop floor, in everyday conversations, until everyone understands the urgency. And no one shall believe this goes from one day or in 1 week. So you have to do it for quite some time so that everybody's on board. And then real alignment happens. So in a turnaround, so focus and disciplined execution matter more than anything. At the same time, you need to celebrate also small wins in all fairness to keep people motivated. You cannot always keep the pressure on such a high level. And for sure, there's an emotional side, right? So teams look to you for stability. So they would like to know where it's going, in what kind of direction it goes, and therefore you have to stay calm and consistent. And I see this or saw this several times. The organization mirrors then how you present yourself. So therefore I'm saying pressure from a business perspective can actually unite a team. And some of the strongest teams I have ever built, were in those moments. So if I see the commercial team, which I built or let's say, project teams, really, this is the right time.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask, what have you learned about yourself when things don't go to plan? But it strikes me that you have worked on the calmness and the consistency. Have there ever been moments where it's kind of flared up in a different way and you'd have to do a lot of kind of self-management to ensure that, the culture doesn't start to wobble?
Of course, there are always moments like this in life, right? So certain things you explore and you see you have to change style, or you have to change, let's say, the way you were thinking. This goes in this direction. So then you have to reshuffle your decisions. I always call it like this, and bring a new decision on board. But in fact, it taught me that leadership is not about having all the answers. So it's but about creating the conditions for people is the key to move forward together. So it's you have to observe, you have to listen carefully. So yes, all these moments shaped me profoundly. They didn't just influence my leadership, they defined, I would say, the leadership style I brought on board. But you always have to be open and be flexible enough that you change if certain things are not going in this direction you expected.
Yeah. And I think that your background is extremely interesting because you spent a lot of your career trying to solve problems across the CDMO industry, both commercial and operations. Okay. And you and I have spoken about your belief where, customers' experience of one business, so the original organization should operate as one, and not as kind of siloed sales, operations, totally different cultures. Why is there often such a disconnect, in your opinion, between the commercial and operations in CDMO?
I would say in such a service business, and luckily not in an insurance business, as there's one product, so I always call it, it's a product business is easier. But in a service business, the disconnect between the commercial and operations, for me, isn't not a surprise. It's almost built into the system, as the two functions operate on completely different time horizons. So with different incentives, business, what they have to deliver, different pressures, and even different definitions of risk. So commercial naturally is focused on growth and customers, relationships, while operations is focused on capacity, compliance, and flawless execution. So one, you can say the one sells the future, the other protects the present. Of course, there's naturally some frictions, and then we pretend that the commercial person should magically, and that's for me really of importance, understand everything. The chemistry, the process risk, the analytical readiness, regulatory, and so on and so on. But of course, the custom of the psychology, right? So, but these people don't exist on the market, and especially not in this type of business. So you have to grow this kind of commercial people internally, and this takes some time, so maybe years, or you hire such a person if they have gone through the same pattern, right? So definitely, if these kind of people are coming from operations with a strong chemical technical background, so then they do the best job, as they can already understand what the other party needs in the organization.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, how do you practically, or how have you practically brought those two worlds together? And would you say it's being able to take people from the other business units and almost switch their roles?
Yeah, switch the roles is for sure one element, but let's say not everybody wants go, and this is a little bit scientists, or let's say people are growing up in such a complex environment in operations are not naturally commercial leaders. So you have to pick the right people having the drive and would like to step into this type of, whether they would like to go to business. But if you grow these people into a commercial function, so then they fully understand what the needs are, and let's say a pure sales function doesn't. If you hire someone who just sold insurances, as I did, without my technical knowledge, it would have been impossible to close contracts or negotiate these terms, understanding what's going at the side. As in this type of industry, the customer expects that you understand what's going on with my baby. So you have to speak the same technical language. So you cannot just bring up your commercial language, which you maybe have done by MBA or business administration. So you have to go one level deeper. Yeah.
Let's look at success. Okay, so when you've got this commercial and operations, they're doing the right dance together. What does success look and feel like when it is operating as one team for you?
So if they are operating as one team, so definitely you have much better business results, right? So you avoid frictions across the team. You can follow timelines. You have a happy customer. Customers really appreciate, so in fact, that everything is aligned, and let's say that even the commercial counterpart is speaking the same language. So for me, at the moment, as a business manager is the prolonged arm of the customer. So we go now in the other direction, so can convey messages back into the organization in a much better way. So the translation is there. There's an acceleration of the information flow. Let's phrase it like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And being the leader or part of the leadership team within that. So you've got your, happy customers, you've got better results, following timelines. You know, that kind of mission and belief system then must obviously start to increase, and the confidence and enjoyability, I suppose, of the role is then something that you can start to ride that wave. But as you said earlier, you don't want to get too comfortable in the success. So how do you then, almost kind of move the Rubik's Cube round to ensure that people are still on their toes and still ensuring that they're curious and working in the right way?
Yeah, so let's say, as I mentioned, right? So bringing commercial and operations together is not about forcing the harmony between those disciplines. So it's about creating a system where both sides understand each other's world and work toward the same outcome. And I would say the curiosity stays there. It's just and this is from both sides. So and when I was quite some time in the commercial role, you're still interested what's moving on with this opportunity. Is it delivered on time? So that you can also steer then the organization as you show the curiosity. And on the other hand, the operations team, so if they see that the commercial function is permanently interested in the progress of development, of manufacturing, it keeps the people, uh, let's say, on a higher stake. So as they see that everyone is interested in what you're doing. So I think these are the key ingredients, right? So the foundation of a system. Yeah. So and less of okay, the one has to do this and the other party is doing this. So in order to remove silos.
Let's dig into the sales element of what you've done. Okay, so sales in a technical industry is kind of a nuance of its own. What led you to rethink the traditional sales model? Obviously, you've spoken about curiosity, so I'd imagine that's deeply ingrained in your thoughts. But yeah, let's talk about how you realigned or rethought the traditional sales model in this world.
Yeah. So I have here a little bit the luxury situations because over the years I've worked with almost every sales model you can imagine, whether these have been pure hunters, pure farmers, and of course then the hybrid roles that try to combine both. And I saw this within DSM. What is the best model? And the truth is, only a very small minority of people, that was my observation, genuinely embody both mindsets at the same time. So we often argue that one person can be equally strong in opening new doors and in nurturing complex long-term relationships. But in reality, those profiles are extremely rare. So additionally, once a person is heavily loaded with an existing business, and that was my biggest observation, or let's say complaint, so hunting becomes a secondary priority. However, future business will suffer if new growth is not nurtured in parallel. So you constantly have to look, okay, so the one business is managed, and we know the long sales cycle in the industry goes from phase one, phase two up to commercial, takes you maybe 10 years. And people like and that, let's say, if sales manager, account manager might get complacent, having now everything loaded with existing business. However, from a company's perspective, yeah, so then where's the new feeder line of early phase business? Yeah, so therefore this is really key element. And so seeing this again and again made me rethink the traditional sales model. Instead of forcing people into roles that don't match their natural strengths, so I started to question how can we design such a system, and I call this as the later on I can share more, but this is a dual sales model or sales model. So how can this be done in a best way? And especially in our business, yeah, selling is in our industry, right? So it's not about the charisma or persistence. It requires a deep understanding, the technical understanding, operational awareness, and the ability to navigate uncertainty. Yeah. So it's really not a theoretical, or it wasn't a theoretical exercise. It became from years of watching what works best, and how is then the question how to split roles in a way so that this functions in the best manner.
And did you bring operations into those sales conversations earlier?
Yeah, in principle, it was not about bringing the operations directly into every sales call, right? So it was more about building a sales model that indirectly integrates operational expertise from very beginning on. So, of course, this also had something to do with the scale of the organization. And that's why I created this dual sales approach I mentioned before, with a clear split of responsibility between the sales manager and the business manager. So you need the technical depth, process understanding, and a realistic view of what the site can deliver. And at least the business manager needs to have all these capabilities. So that's, and in fact, the split was having a business manager with strong technical capabilities and the sales manager with the drive natural sales manager. So the sales manager identifies the opportunity and kicks off the process. Then a business manager is assigned as the representative of a specific manufacturing site. And so it also depends on the scale of the business. So if you just have one site, you might pick a different sales model. But if you have multiple sites, and at the beginning I had to manage 6 manufacturing sites, so then you start thinking how to do it. So, and what I really did, so the quotation manager at the site, I pulled in as well. So in the commercial team, um, the guys are calculating the costs, hence then over the details to the business manager. And this was the nuance, right? So the business manager compiles then the full proposal, which is handed over to the sales manager. And the sales manager takes then the proposal back to the customer interface. So the big advantage is so that the sales manager is then supported by the business manager or additional operational experts if needed. So the business manager with all this knowledge, whatever it was, and I've seen several examples, supported several times in the sales manager, and the customer immediately ask more frequently questions to the entire, to both. Yeah, so as they spoke the same language, and we know many of our CDMO customers coming from chemical technical environment. So, and the good thing is once the business is won, the same business manager stays with the project, ensuring continuity and credibility, while the sales manager can focus then on new opportunities. So with this model, yeah, so this eliminates definitely handover gaps, brings operational reality into the sales cycle early, and creates a unified message towards the customer. Yeah, so in my opinion, it's much more faster, transparent. But as I said, it depends on the scale of the business whether you would like to afford such a business model.
I suppose the most important question is how did the how did the customers feel having both perspectives? You just mentioned it earlier that they were able to go and ask technical questions to the business manager and have that continuity. But how did they feel? What was the feedback?
So at the beginning, so it was training. We had some slide decks, but at the beginning, certain customers, especially emerging and small biotech companies, yeah, felt it was a little bit over-engineered. Yeah, 2 people show up instead of 1 in the process. But very quickly, as I mentioned before, and you say this as well, so or repeat it. So they quickly saw the benefits. They realized the direct link to the site, speaking the same technical language. No overselling from, it could be, it's a pitfall sometimes, right? So from a sales guy selling, overselling, and certain customers don't like this, and full transparency throughout the entire process. So it created trust, I would say, rather quickly in the industry, and it's after 1 year, I think it was fully accepted, yeah, so by everyone. What I have seen, or where I joined then meetings during CPHI or DCAT, I ask proactively, how do you see the model?
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, but do you think that some organizations, if they don't include the business manager or operations, do you think that sometimes they're overselling their capability because the operations aren't involved early enough?
Yeah. So especially I've seen other models, right? So and this can happen especially if you don't have the knowledge and the background. So I have seen models, and this was also under DSM time. Sales manager has to sell drug products, small molecule API, biologics. You cannot expect that this sales manager knows all the details. But then if you're a natural sales guy, yeah, you're overselling what you hear and talk about. But I made the correlation. This kind of selling process have not been really successful. So there was less business won because customers pulled back, especially in the API CDMO business. So they pulled them back because they don't feel understood. Yeah.
You mentioned a big word earlier. I personally believe that CDMOs are basically selling trust. And if that disappears or if it's broken, that's where the biggest void starts to happen between the customer and the CDMO. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Therefore, I'm saying this dual sales approach, right? So it unlocked a completely different level of trust. Yeah. So it was there, yeah, with customers, but also internally. So by having the business manager and sales manager in the room together, the communication became transparent and credible. So, and because the same people stayed involved from proposal to execution, there were no handover gaps and no misunderstandings later on. And expectations were aligned from day one on. So, in my opinion, and therefore I'm a very fighter for this type of sales model, created trust upfront and accountability downstream. And that combination dramatically improved delivery and customer confidence.
Yeah. And we spent quite a lot of time now actually talking more external, more business operations, trying to get things right for the customer. Let's maybe pivot on the internal piece because you've also taken a lot of calculated risks internally, which is also not always easy, especially when you're integrating new sites or integrating even a pharma site into a CDMO organization. So can we talk about how you did that? Let's have a little bit more of an internal lens. What's the biggest risk, I suppose, you took when integrating pharma sites into the CDMO network?
Yeah, this is great. So it's one of my topics in my career path. So and I have been involved twice. Yeah, so not everybody can show this that you had two times the luxury situation to integrate big pharma or have been involved there. But integration big pharma sites. So the one was, and this is public knowledge. So Roche Florence in 2017. In my career, tried several times as I have been there early in my business career. First time, I think it was 2002. So I always wanted to have this site needs to be a CDMO site. So, and the second time was then the GSK Coke site in 2019, end of 19. And although every integration has its own story, I would say the fundamental risk is always the same. Yeah. So how quickly can you, and this is the message, how quickly can you shift a big pharma mindset into a CDMO mindset? And how fast can you increase then the asset utilization to make the site economically viable? And I always call it the industry pattern. So many integrations took place, different competitors acquired pharma sites, but the industry pattern is predictable. You take over the assets and employees and you sign a multi-year supply agreement. So that gives you stability at the beginning, but it also creates a false sense of security. Yeah. So because the real challenge starts on day one. So changing culture, changing behavior, and preparing a team that has served one customer for decades to suddenly serve many. And this is the game. Yeah. So don't do something wrong. Day one counts. Yeah. So, but let's be clear. Such a cultural change takes time under normal conditions, maybe 2 to 5 years. Yeah. Even this is a long time span, but, people change behavior. You're using the process. Still, you have changed everything. So therefore, 2 to 5 years, I would say, is a normal time span. Of course, people can say on day two, wow, I'm now Thermo Fisher or Passion or whoever. But in reality, they fall back in their working behavior, what they have learned or when they have been grown up in such a big pharma culture. And, and it's not because people resist, it's because the entire operating logic is different. So, and it's in big pharma, you optimize for depth. In CDMOs, you optimize for breadth. Yeah. So in pharma, you have one customer, so internally, and in CDMOs, you have plenty of customers. So the shift is enormous. And I still remember when I spoke with a couple of colleagues right after the acquisition of the Roche Florent side. Wow, every customer wants to have something differently. So how to bring this under one umbrella? And this is a mindset change. So if you're growing up in CDMO, you are used to this, but these people have to slowly adapt and learn this, right? But the learning goes both ways. Yeah. So CDMO sites can also benefit tremendously from from the discipline and the quality mindset of a pharma site. But let's say the biggest challenge is always the same: embracing a multi-customer world with all its volatility, speed, and commercial pressure. It's different. Yeah. And you can say what made it risky. So at the beginning, in fact, as I said, you're betting on your ability to transform this culture, accelerate the utilization, as big pharma operates on a low utilization, as they have this type of portfolio, but CDMO players with a lower margin business have to look so that they increase utilization rather quickly and build. So if the supply agreement is having declining volumes over the years, so you have to be rather quickly to compensate the declining volume with new business. And therefore, I'm saying day one is really of importance, so that you start already bringing the CDMO culture in it. I know it's a challenge. Is it not possible all the time? So in fact, the biggest risk wasn't the assets or the technology, it was the mindset shift. Yeah. And if you can manage that, everything else becomes possible.
Yeah, and you're obviously coming at these acquisitions and integrations with an optimistic lens, right? Because once you said earlier that you thought that Roche Florence should be a CDMO site, so you were like, right, this is a good idea. What about those that are in the site with uncertainty? How did you lead through that?
So dealing with uncertainty is always you have to stay open-minded. Yeah, so you have to let's say clearly communicate to people what is your drive, what is your strategy, what is the direction you would like to go, and then I think once you open and again see all this kind of other leaders bring this in your let's say on board, then you can really change something and you can lead with uncertainty. If you get in a panic mode, or let's say you can take slow decisions, then it also interrupts the path forward. It's better to take a faster decision than and commit to this one and turn around if you see that doesn't work. Yeah, so I think then you have the buy-in from the employees much more than having no decision. Yeah, so
The worst decision is no decision.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what about your ability then to maybe think creatively when trying to solve some of these complex problems? Do you bring other people into your think tank to try and get the answers so that you could progress?
Definitely. So if in a world, yeah, so that people see that they are in a safe environment, yeah, so they speak up. So therefore, I always pick, and this is my expectation, that people even challenge me, challenge the status quo, and bring up new ideas. So therefore, it's a mutual path, right? But it depends already from the beginning what kind of culture you are implementing from the beginning on, so that people are speaking up, and then you can pull every creativity and idea to go in the direction. And I have done decisions or made decisions which, let's say, based on feedback from the organization, from my leaders, direct reports, uh, we adjusted then the path as it was needed, right? So you can not observe everything as one leader. So you need the knowledge and, let's say, what others are seeing, and then you drive the company in the right direction.
Yeah. So I love to um, finish these discussions with an optimistic view on the industry, on leadership, all that kind of good stuff. So, what excites you, I suppose, most about life sciences in general?
Yeah, life science in general, um, I would say there's never still stand. Yeah, so there's a constant movement from the relocation of certain activities uh, to Asia. We have to accept this, and we have to make sure how to deal with this. But it goes from the relocation also to the consolidation we will increasingly see across the CDMO landscape in the near future. You can see this as something negative, but what really energized me is the increasing complexity, yeah, of the new molecules that's on the market, yeah, and the speed at which technology is changing how we develop and manufacture drugs, and this all in alignment with our regulatory bodies. In other words, the bar keeps rising. That's how I see it, and that creates opportunities for companies and for leaders who can adapt fast, to build strong partnerships, and, in my opinion, stay ahead of the curve.
What about the future of leadership?
Yeah, I think um, leadership will become even more about clarity, empathy, and adaptability. Yeah, so teams have to collaborate in a global environment. Expectations are higher, and change will become a constant factor for sure, supported by artificial intelligence. So we have to bring this into the organizations. But I think you can also benefit of it. Yeah, so and but the leadership, yeah, so leaders will need to communicate openly, build the trust quickly, and empower people rather than direct them. So it's less about, and I'm really a believer in this, so it's less about authority and much more about creating the conditions for others to perform. Yeah, so and this is maybe different in other companies, but in this science-driven business, authority will not make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, so less about authority, more about the conditions and the environment for people to be the best version of themselves.
Right.
Yeah,
So absolutely.
excellent. So, my final question, okay, before we leave, this has been absolutely fantastic. The frameworks that you've shared and the experiences have been absolutely brilliant. Um, Final question: what advice would you give to the next generation of leaders looking to build a career in life sciences manufacturing or the CDMO landscape?
So it's a little bit the summary, maybe what I've talked about, but my advice to the next generation of leaders is simple, and let's say, maybe it's a little bit also a copy paste of what I have done, where I see the successes, but you build on your successes, right? So, but stay curious, communicate openly, and don't be afraid of difficult moments. Yeah, so they are the ones that will shape you. And then invest in people, early, even before they fully see their own potential. So this was for me the one I had early in my career, right? But I think if you do this with your people and they have tried several times, so if you pick certain where you see these are potential leaders or natural leaders and you invest in these colleagues, you see that they will make really fast career. And so therefore I'm saying, and keep your mindset disciplined and open, especially also under pressure.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed today's discussion. As I said, I think that the themes and topics that we were able to discuss and the real workable experiences and frameworks have been fantastic. I hope that the listeners enjoy today's episode as much as I have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, for having me here today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.